Hi, I'm Courtney Anderson with the City and County of Denver, and I work in the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. Welcome to the public briefings for the 2022 Denver Building and Fire Code and the Denver Green Code adoption process. I'll be reviewing proposals for the Code Committee hearings. And this is also in collaboration with Community Planning and Development. This is the short introduction for the public briefings, so to view and hear more about our more in-depth goals, please review the first portion of the first public briefing. Thank you. These public briefings are to keep public updated on Code Committee progress. They're intended to be less technical explanations for upcoming code proposals and previews for what's scheduled to be heard in the upcoming hearings and recaps of what happened in the past hearings. All comments and questions should be brought to committee hearings. So you please go to the 2022 Denver Building and Fire Code and Denver Green Code adoption process website, where we have a list of proposed amendments, schedules, agendas, and ways to sign up to attend a hearing. To hear the full discussion and really ask any questions, please attend these Code Committee hearings. There will be 9 public briefings to coincide with the IUCC and Denver Green Code Energy Chapter hearings, and these will happen 8 days before the hearings. So on this calendar for February, you can see it happens 8 days before the IUCC and a day before the Denver Green Code hearings. And here's a schedule below of these intended public briefing dates. When we talk about the code committees, we're talking about the code committees for the Denver Building and Fire Code and the Denver Green Code. The Denver Building and Fire Code have building codes like the International Building Code, the International Fire Code, the International Energy Conservation Code. And the Denver Green Code is a code that allows the community to test provisions. It's updated every 3 years, and the provisions are reevaluated to see what can be moved to mandatory code. We add more progressive provisions every code cycle to reflect the community's vision for Denver. This code cycle will introduce a limited use mandatory for the Denver Green Code. This will be a limited use for the Denver Green Code on all commercial, including multifamily residential projects. And the goal is to elevate all new building project performance in Denver. Project teams will choose a very small number of provisions from each chapter for each project. And readership will provide a preview of priorities expected to be mandatory soon. The development community can prepare to succeed, and it will accelerate familiarity with the code sections in the Denver Green Code. There will still be the optional full use of the Denver Green Code, which encourages exemplary leadership and shows what's attainable today. This is the Denver Code adoption process. So last summer we started with working groups where we met with community members, subject matter experts, and stakeholders to hear what ideas and concepts they wanted for the City and County of Denver. We then developed those ideas and concepts into city proposed amendments. We also requested public proposals, so anyone from the public was able to submit a proposal to be heard in the committee meetings. Through the end of January to the middle of May, there will be technical advisory committee meetings that will be ongoing to hear and make recommendations to approve or disapprove proposals. Those will be published and be sent to City Council for recommendations of proposals, and there'll be a briefing and a vote. And if that's approved by City Council, then that will create the 2022 Denver Building and Fire Code. For the Code Committee structure, the committee hearings will be with Community Planning and Development. There will be 6 committee hearing series. First one being the International Building Code and International Existing Building Code, the International Fire Code, the International Residential Code, the International Mechanical, Plumbing, and Fuel Gas Code, and what these briefings will be focused on is the International Energy Conservation Code and the Denver Green Code Energy Chapters. That will be one series. And then the Denver Green Code non-energy chapters will be another series. There'll be 15 to 30 voting members of each committee series. Noresco is Denver's code consultant, and they will be facilitating these meetings. They are open to public to listen or to be a proponent or opponent. They will also be following Robert's Rules of Order, where a proponent speaks. Then there'll be speakers in support of the proposal and then speakers in opposition. Then the committee has a chance to ask questions, where there will be a rebuttal in support and then a rebuttal in opposition. And if necessary, there'll be floor modifications and then eventually getting called to a vote. And the committees will be voting to recommend approvals of proposals. And the agendas for the committee hearings will be posted 5 days ahead of the hearing, and the minutes will be posted 5 days after the hearing. There will be 2 committee hearing series with the Office of Community Planning Development and the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency in collaboration. The first one, which I've mentioned before, is the combination of the International Energy Conservation Code, or the IECC, and the Denver Green Code Energy chapters. There'll be 9 hearings for this series, and you can see the dates below. The other series will be the Denver Green Code non-energy chapters, and there will be 6 of these hearings with these dates listed below. Many of you have probably seen a chart like this showing the progression of the various codes and how they compare to Denver's goals. It's based on carbon intensity instead of energy, so the relationship between the codes might look different from similar charts. The carbon is cumulative carbon intensity over a 20-year lifespan, the anticipated average equipment life of new equipment. The carbon intensity takes into account the projected decarbonization of Excel's electricity grid. This allows us to graph the impact of efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy proposals all on one graph. This chart includes the ultimate goal for Denver from Denver's Net Zero Energy Implementation Plan. But keep in mind that this is the overarching goal for the actual performance of buildings. But we are talking about the Energy Code, which primarily addresses the design of buildings rather than the actual outcomes. And we know that there's a divide between the Energy Code and the actual performance in buildings. In 2024, Denver will be adopting policies to address actual performance outcomes in buildings in order to bring actual performance into alignment with code expectations. So the goal is for 2027 code to require net zero energy for design through traditional energy code requirements, and for actual performance to start achieving net zero energy in 2030 through the addition of outcome-based policies to work with the energy code. But always keeping in mind that this is about code vintage. Because of permitting and construction timelines, buildings permitted under the 2022 will continue to be built as late as 2027. This chart includes 2 points for the 2022 Denver Energy Code. One represents the maximum potential of all the proposals that have been proposed, and the other shows where we are with the proposals adopted so far after the first hearing. So we can see that we have the proposals we need to meet Denver's goal. This is all based on estimates of the status of Denver's codes and the impact of the proposals. And some proposals have modeling to support saving potentials, but for most of them, the impact had to be based on best estimates by our consultants, Noresco and NBI, since hard savings or electrification impact numbers weren't available. When we look at the same chart for residential, we can see that even though the line is not as steep, the national model codes have not made the same kind of progress in the last few code cycles. So Denver residential code has more ground to make up than the commercial code in order to meet Denver's goals. As a consequence, all of the submitted proposals, which include efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy, would not get Denver to its goals unless the proposals are modified to deliver more efficiency, more renewable energy, and full electrification. This chart demonstrates what the impact of 5 proposals have on achieving Denver's goals. So you can see the Denver Energy Code 2022 current status is nearly on top of the Denver Energy Code 2022 maximum potential, because these 5 proposals represent about 90% of the impact of all of the proposed proposals on the table. So this is for commercial, and the 5 proposals are calibrating C406, which is the prescriptive path, calibrating Appendix G, which is the modeling path, electrifying space and water heating as 2 different proposals, as well as having a minimum renewable energy proposal. And this story is very similar for the residential impact. So you can see that the current status and the maximum potential, again, are nearly on top of each other, because these 5 proposals for residential represent about 90% of the impact of all proposals on the table. So it's similar where it's calibrating the R408, which is the prescriptive path, R406, which is the modeling path, electrifying space and water heating, and again, minimum renewable energy requirements. So I'll be reviewing some of these top impact proposals for commercial, and then following weeks we'll be doing some residential ones. So for commercial, the first is proposal number 6, which is calibrating section C406 to Denver's goals. This relates to the prescriptive path for commercial. So the 2021 edition of the IECC replaced the C406 package options with credit options. So this proposal calibrates the number of points required by C406 to meet the performance goals set by the City and County of Denver for the next cycle of the Denver Energy Code. It also sets specific targets based on building type in order to allow Denver to move all building types towards Denver's net zero energy goals at a level rate. It allows the stringency of the prescriptive compliance path to be quickly and easily calibrated to Denver's goals by simply changing the number of points required. It provides maximum flexibility possible for projects using the prescriptive path, since project teams will be able to choose which credit options are the most effective and cost-effective for their particular project. It also allows the custom elements of Denver's code to be confined to C406 by keeping Denver's code requirements more aligned with those of neighboring jurisdictions, since the efficiency requirements in the main body of the code will remain the same. This will make compliance easier for the market, which will make enforcement easier for the city. And it requires little to no change to standard code compliance tools like ComCheck. It simplifies the charts by combining all building types on one chart and only using Denver's climate zone. It also replaces the single credit target in the IECC 2021 with a table that contains a custom credit target for each building type that will keep them moving on the trajectory required to meet Denver's net zero energy goals. The next proposal is Proposal 4, which is about minimum renewable energy for commercial buildings. This proposal requires commercial buildings to acquire a minimum percentage, so 20% of their annual energy consumption from renewable energy, or to achieve an equivalent amount of performance from Section C406, which we just reviewed, or from an on-site renewable energy resource. The system can be sized prescriptively with a table in C405, or through modeling that determines the actual energy annual usage of the building. This proposal is also structured to provide alternate options for buildings that cannot physically accommodate an on-site renewable energy system that can meet these requirements. Buildings can also comply by implementing any of the 2 of the following options: an all-electric construction, off-site renewable energy, and additional efficiency through Section C406. The next proposal regarding commercial buildings is Proposal 18, limiting modeling to Appendix G. So this proposal eliminates the C407 compliance path from the IECC and Chapter 11 from 90.1, leaving Appendix G as the sole model performance compliance path. It also eliminates the prescriptive path in ASHRAE 90.1 as a compliance option. There are currently 5 compliance paths in IECC 2021. We need to create a greater consistency in performance outcomes in new Denver buildings by limiting the number of compliance paths and calibrating them to the same level of efficiency in the Denver Energy Code. The multiple paths also create complexity for code users and challenges for effective code enforcement. This proposal reduces the compliance paths to just the prescriptive path in the IECC and the modeling approach in Appendix G from ASHRAE 90.1. The modeling approach from Appendix G was chosen because this modeling methodology has received consistent development with each development cycle of ASHRAE Standard 90.1. This development has enabled the modeling path to more fully incorporate enhancements to the prescriptive path and to more clearly define modeling parameters and variables. Conversely, the modeling path section C407 of the IECC has not received any development since the 2012 code cycle. It does not include all of the prescriptive elements of the code and methodology. Now we'll be reviewing the proposals for the upcoming IECC and Denver Green Code Energy hearings and the Denver Green Code non-energy hearings. These are my notes and summaries of the proposals taken from the reason statements and the overall body of the proposal. For public proposals, I've done my best to not change the intent of these proposals. To read these in detail, please visit the 2022 Denver Building and Fire Code and Denver Green Code Adoption Process website, where we have a list of proposed amendments. To hear the full discussion and ask any questions, please attend the Code Committee hearings. And you can see there's a breakdown on the website of each of these proposals. So the first proposal is the next proposal is also a public proposal from Mike Fulton. It's about section C403.8, fans and fan controls. And this is for an intermittent bathroom exhaust system. The power shall be provided through an automatic shut-off timer switch with a maximum time limit of 30 minutes. And the goal of this is to reduce energy consumption and unnecessary infiltration in buildings. The next proposal is proposal number 5 about section C403 8.1 about allowable fan power. So this proposal revises the fan power allowance for systems that provide heating, cooling, and ventilation. And by reducing the pressure of ductwork, the fan system can achieve a significant energy savings. This is especially important for smaller systems with constant volume fans that currently do not have requirements for fan power. The energy saving benefits are great for systems that are continuously operating to provide ventilation. And there's a resiliency benefit because even if the rooftop cooling and heating equipment is replaced, the ducts will commonly also remain in place. Next proposal is proposal 57 about section C403.5 economizers. This increases the cooling system efficiency by requiring economizers on a smaller capacity systems and requiring those economizers to minimize compressor operation when free cooling is available. So this increases the efficiency of cooling systems when outdoor air temperatures are mild, allowing more systems to use free cooling with cool outdoor air rather than through the compressor-based cooling equipment. And this is a proposal that moved a requirement from the Denver Green Code to the IECC. And the change to the Denver Green Code will align the Denver Green Code with this revised IECC economizer requirement and removes any unnecessary exemptions. Proposal 39 about section C405 3.2 about LPDs or lighting power densities for IECC and Denver Green Code. And this proposal reduces allowable lighting power in buildings to keep pace with improving efficiency of lighting systems. The improvements in lighting efficiency and in lighting design allow for the further reductions in the allowable lighting power. You can see that in table C405.3.2, those reductions. The next proposal is a public proposal submitted by David Carlson. And it's about section C405.3.3, lighting for plant growth and maintenance. And this proposal removes requirements for listing or testing by certified OSHA nationally recognized testing labs, or NRTL. And this proposal author says listing standards for luminaires by an NRTL addresses safety issues and does not relate to energy conservation issues. And this requirement should not be included in the IECC. Including this requirement for NRTL, the author believes it's probably infringing on provisions in other codes that allow for alternatives and exceptions to an NRTL listing. Next proposal is public proposal number P36. This is from Celeste at Group 14 Engineering. And this proposal is about section C405.12, energy monitoring. There's two parts to this proposal. The first one increases the square footage requirements for end-use metering requirements. You can see this up here. And the beginning of this section has an exception for tenant spaces and R2 occupancies less than 5,000 square feet. This exemption in the third proposal states 25,000 square feet and is inconsistent with the first exception. And the second part of this proposal adds a web-based platform for a reporting mechanism to the graphical energy report requirements of this section. And the reason behind that is that they say that modern energy monitoring systems are web-based and easily accessible. These systems have robust information analysis and reporting with software that can be updated over time. One second while I switch my screen. This next proposal is number 74.2 about sections C405.13, congregate roof penetrations for solar. And this proposal adds a requirement for solar-ready buildings to ensure that there's adequate roof area and solar access for future rooftop PV systems that are free from obstructions and have sufficient distance from any commercial rooftop equipment. This proposal also requires that designers specify allowable loads on commercial roofs. PV panels, racks, and mounting hardware typically weigh less than 4 pounds per square foot, which can be accommodated by most standard commercial roofs. And this proposal is needed because newly constructed commercial buildings do not typically allocate roof space for future PVs. And just to note, this solar ready requirement does not require solar PV, but it provides capability for future renewables. And there is an exception that I'm trying to locate. There it is. Where there's an exception for certain heights, buildings with PV and buildings where it is 70% shaded. The next proposal is number 83, about section C403.1.2 and large energy use and water use for building restrictions. So this proposal will greatly reduce water consumption in newly constructed data centers because water use is a critical issue in Denver and throughout the Western United States. There's a requirement for data centers to report water usage effectiveness, or WUE, and will aid regulators in advancing rules to limit water use. And there are requirements in this proposal for, let me find it. For any communication to be adiabatic. And number 4 here, evaporative cooling towers used in data centers shall use only non-potable water. Next proposal is number 41, about C403.4.1 and R403.1, heat pump supplemental heat restrictions. And this proposal limits operations of supplemental electric resistance heat to reduce energy during the winter months. This measure will also lower peak demand during the winter months. And this proposal, because many thermostats used with split systems, a lot of those being in multifamily or hotel spaces, have a wide variety of control settings to adjust your user comfort. For example, the Ecobee has a setting that enables supplemental electric resistance heat whenever the space temperature is more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit below the thermostat setting, which is commonly kicked on by occupants. This proposal would address that thermostat manufacturers can easily adjust these default settings on thermostats to address these issues, since users are not likely to adjust these settings. And the next proposal is public proposal by David Carlson, number P7, and it is scroll down for section CA 103.7 for this code section about electrical service reserve space. This proposal wants to remove the restriction about placement on the panel and allowance for interconnections to align with the NEC, which is the National Electrical Code. Proposal number 24.1, which is also a public proposal by Robbie Schwartz, is about section C105 for third-party inspection agencies. And this proposal better defines the relationship between an approved third-party inspection agency and the code official. It defines a path forward for third-party inspection agencies and jurisdictions to work together with provisions about the authorization of approved third-party inspection agencies, which you can see here, the approved third-party inspection scope, and approved third-party inspection reporting requirements. And the last IECC and Denver Green Code Energy proposal that will be slated to come up is Public Proposal P45. This is at section C505 and R505, the change in occupancy. And this was submitted by Michaela at the City of Denver. And this proposal clarifies the change of occupancy requirements in Chapter 11 of the IRC and the commercial and residential provisions of the IECC. It adapts Denver's amendment to section C505 of the IECC and modifies it to address a change in use or occupancy when a structure goes from IBC structure to an IRC structure and vice versa. So the reason behind this is the city and county of Denver encourages the reuse of structures. And in Denver, we often see IBC occupancies convert to IRC. The current provision places a hardship on applicants that choose or are considering to reuse a structure. For example, a change in occupancy from IBC lodging to a dwelling unit would require an applicant to comply with the requirements of the IECC for new construction. The structure would be required to meet all of the mandatory provisions of the IECC. So this proposal clarifies that the IRC uses would be in the same energy demand category as the IBC R occupancies. And this will just really provide clarification where there's a change in occupancy from an IRC to an IBC occupancy. And that is all of the proposals for the IECC and Denver Green Code Energy Committees. Again, to hear them in more detail and to hear the conversation, please come or listen to the public hearings that will be upcoming next week. So thank you very much. And shortly, we will be jumping over to the Denver Green Code proposals for non-energy. Again, next I'll be reviewing the proposals for the upcoming Denver Green Code non-energy hearings. These are the proposals scheduled to be heard at the next Denver Green Code non-energy hearings, but given the discussion time, some of these may roll into the next hearings. These are my notes and summaries of the proposals taken from the reason statements and overall body of the proposal. For public proposals, I have done my best to not change the intent of these proposals. To read these in detail, please visit the 2022 Denver Building and Fire Code and Denver Green Code Adoption Process website, where we have a list of proposed amendments. To hear the full discussion and ask any questions, please attend the Code Committee hearings. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I'll be going through these proposals one at a time and just giving a high-level overview of them. So the first proposal is proposal number 38 about in-chapter site sustainability, and it's about Bird Safe Glazing. So this proposal includes requirements and specific guidelines for Bird Safe Glazing design and implementation. According to the National Audubon Society, bird collision with building facades is known to be a leading cause of bird deaths. As many as 1 billion birds die in collisions each year. Requiring bird-friendly materials on the building envelope, as well as landscape and water features, will help to protect birds from colliding with glass. The City and County of Denver is taking the lead in bird conservation through the Lights Out Denver initiative, which strives to conserve bird populations through monitoring and data collection, and encouraging building owners to turn off or dim their lights during migration season from midnight to dawn, as well as take measures to retrofit or make their buildings bird friendly. And so you can see here there's added definitions in the proposal as well as requirements for bird friendly materials. The next proposal is proposal number 43. And this one is also in Chapter 5, Site Sustainability, and it's about declining species support. So this proposal takes action to protect species that are identified to be in decline in Denver. When species become extinct in a complex ecosystem that has developed over time, the ecosystem can fall out of balance and lead to collapse of the system. This can have a domino effect that destabilizes ecosystem health regionally. So species identified as endangered or species of concern are known to inhabit areas in Denver and are in areas designated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife as riparian corridors, lakes, and wetlands are some of the most biologically productive natural ecosystems in the world and are considered to have high ecological and societal value. So the proposed language uses established standards by the Sustainable Sites Initiative, as well as guidelines from the Fish and Wildlife Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and National Audubon to preserve areas of endangered and valuable habitats and encourage improvement of habitats on developed sites. The next proposal is proposal number 45 in Chapter 5, Site Sustainability of the Denver Green Code. And this is for defined allowable pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, and organic choices. So this proposal is intended to define allowable pesticides, fertilizers, and herbicides while promoting self-sustaining organic landscape practices. Reduced use of chemical applications to exterior landscapes has a positive effect in mitigating air and water pollution that result from the chemical uptake into rivers and waterways. So mimicking natural ecosystems in landscape practices is necessary for preserving fragile ecosystems, maintaining clean water, and eliminating chemicals to human populations. And you can see in this proposal the added definitions to this chapter, as well as the requirements for having organic landscape plans. The next proposal is Proposal 48B, again in Chapter 5, Site Sustainability of the Denver Green Code, about glare requirements. So this minimizes light trespass from buildings and sites and reduces sky glow to increase night sky access, improves nighttime visibility through glare reduction, and reduces development impact on nocturnal environments. Poor lighting wastes billions of dollars per year in energy consumption and carbon emissions. And the International Dark Sky Association estimates that at least 30% of all outdoor lighting in the U.S. is wasted, mostly by lights that aren't properly shielded. That adds up to about $3 billion in wasted energy every year. Wasted outdoor lighting in the U.S. also generates about 15 million tons of carbon dioxide per year into the atmosphere. And a growing body of research suggests that light pollution may have a significant and adverse impact on human health. So you can see the requirements added for the Denver Green Code for backlight and glare. And there's a different maximum allowable glare ratings for building mounted and for backlight and uplight and glare requirements. This next proposal is a public proposal submitted by Michael Rousseau, and it's about restoration and maintenance of honeybee populations. So the purpose of this proposal is to suggest additions to the code that could be alternatives to more expensive sustainability improvements and practices. And this proposal will ensure that honeybee populations, and therefore a healthy supply of generalist pollinators, will be maintained in the Denver urban environment. Biodiversity is an important goal of the code because it is important for Denver to have a healthy environment that supports a strong ecosystem. Honeybee colonies have a mortality rate of up to 50% per year due to climate change, pesticide use, changing landscapes, and diseases. Honeybee colonies, when maintained professionally, can survive our winters and provide pollinator services to a 2-mile radius around their hive. This means that hives in Denver location have an impact on a much larger community than just their immediate location. So you can see in this proposal there are requirements for installation for honeybees and the hive management requirements. Our next proposal is proposal number 140 in Chapter 5, Sustainability of the Denver Green Code related to passive solar on individual lots. So this proposal outlines what a passive solar design needs to consider to maximize energy savings. An important aspect of good passive solar design is that it takes advantage of the opportunities at the specific site to reduce energy use passively. And passive solar design takes advantage of a building site, climate, and materials to minimize that energy use. And a well-designed passive solar home first reduces heating and cooling loads through energy efficiency strategies, and then meets those needs, those reduced loads in whole or part with solar energy. And you can see the different requirements for passive solar design within this proposal. And the last proposal scheduled to be discussed during the upcoming Denver Green Code non-energy hearing is proposal number 66 for gray water systems in city facilities. So the purpose of including these gray water provisions into this chapter of the Denver Green Code is to enhance the design and construction of buildings through the use of building concepts having a positive environmental impact and encouraging sustainable construction practices, allowing efficiency and conservation of water, and promoting resource efficiency. Water is a critical resource in Denver and the West, and Denver as a community is uniquely positioned to provide exemplary leadership to communities throughout Colorado River Basin. Initiatives tied to reducing Denver community demand on critically strained eastern snowpack and Colorado River source water are of high value to both Denver citizens in the short term and to regional residents in the future. On-site gray water reuse is one in a suite of strategies to enhance responsible water use and more strongly reconnect our community consciousness to this critical, life-giving, and increasingly stressed resource. And the state of Colorado has specific regulations regarding gray water systems, and the City and County of Denver does not wish to override, amend, or detract from those regulations. So this proposal points directly to Regulation 86 to find all the requirements for the system design, control, and installation. And in alignment with the 2018 Denver policy addressing gray water systems, all of the state level possible options are accepted in Denver. So we wish to include them in the full under the Denver Green Code provisions, making sure that it's clear that each option is considered a separate provision when choosing electives. And again, to read these in detail, please visit the 2022 Denver Green Code, Denver Building and Fire Code, and Denver Green Code Adoption Process website, where we have a list of all these proposal amendments in detail. And to hear the full discussion and ask any questions, please attend the Code Committee hearings. Thank you for listening.